with sort of the idea. I mean, just the trailers. Everything I'd heard of, like, I kept hearing things, and I'd watch the trailers, and I was just like, this does not sound like it's gonna be good.
Right.
But I still wanted it to be good, and then when it came out, and people were like, there were a lot of people who were like, no, it's really good, the critics just are being, like, harsh on it, because they don't like, whatever, I was like, cool, that could be good, but, I mean, my expectations were low. But when I went to see G.I. Joe, and I was like, this is going to be a piece of shit, I came away being like, that was fucking great, because my expectations were so low that I thought it was going to be a piece of shit, and then, when Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow have these, like, 3 amazing fight scenes, I was like, you know what, that movie was worth it just for that, because that was awesome. And that... So did you see Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice?
I did not.
Okay.
That's part of why I was asking, because the consensus, at least at first, seemed to be, it's really terrible, and then there's been sort of
there's a backlash, and there's like a backlash to the backlash.
To the backlash, exactly. And obviously I do not ascribe to the whole, people are just saying they hate it because they're whatever following the trend or want to clicks or fuck.
Right.
Nor that you
don't think
can't legitimately hate it.
You don't think that Marvel is paying critics to say that they?
Yeah, no. This is not a thing I believe. No.
My favorite thing about that theory is that if you look at, there's like the trend, or the relationship between review scores and box office is like, there's no...
Yeah, there's none.
There's none. So, that's just...
The movie isn't anticipated enough, it won't matter.
Right, exactly. So...
Which is why do they keep letting him make these movies?
Because money.
Well, because he makes an assload of money, and so... It doesn't matter what you think about his prowess or whatever, or how good or bad he handles how well or terribly he handles the material.
Right.
If everybody goes to see the movie, then he gets to make more.
But someone, a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, I posted a Facebook screed about this, which we're friends on Facebook, so you can read it, even though I know you never use your Facebook.
Correct.
Last time I looked at your Facebook feed, it was literally just a series of places that I had checked into and tagged that I was with you.
Yep.
So, I can't believe that guy just stopped me from eliminating this other guy. What a dick.
They're secretly...
Why I thought it was a fascinating failure. I just want to chirp that in there while we're talking. So there's one scene that I was like, that was cool. And many scenes that I was like... It's just... Here's the... Oh, I'm sorry. My friend on Facebook, he was like, people are just parroting what the critics say. And I'm like, either that or like, it's bad in all of those same ways, and everybody is realizing it. Like...
Yeah. Either they're just espousing what someone else is saying, or that is an actual problem.
Oh, spike pile driver.
It.
Right, exactly, and so a lot of what you've heard is stuff that I agree with. Although there's the things that people are saying that they didn't like, and versus because I don't know that I've seen anybody say that it was universally terrible, right? That like this movie has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
I've seen people say good things about portions of it. I've seen a lot of people say that they think Ben Affleck is really good as Batman.
Ben Affleck is really good as Batman.
I've seen at least some people claim he's the best Batman, which I'm like,
yeah, I cannot go there. Like, that, I get why people would... I can't go there. Partially just because the way he's written doesn't work for me.
Well, that's one of the things I would think would be hard to get past. It's like, you can have a really great performance, but if it's a great performance of a terrible piece of writing, then...
Right. The thing that bugs me is that he kills without regard.
Right.
And there's no exploration of that. Like, if it's just really weird
about it or anything.
No. He like runs a dude's face over with the Batmobile. Like, he is absolutely not conflicted. No, it's just, there's things that, the problem is the movie's 2.5 hours long. There's apparently a 3-hour R-rated director's cut happening at some point, but the problem is, it doesn't, people do things without any motivation, and like, I could totally see if they had said, you know, if they'd explained, like, you know, the presence of Superman and the destruction of, you know, of Metropolis and all of those people that, you know, in the Wayne Enterprises building that gets destroyed during the fight, like, you know, that like drove him over the edge, and that's when he started killing, and that, like, then I would be sort of like, okay, I sort of get that, and like maybe he can turn back from that. But if you know, that's pure speculation on my part. There's nothing in the text of the film that suggests that is actually the case.
Right.
And by the same token, like Lex Luthor, he just hates Superman. Why does he hate Superman? Because that's what Lex Luthor does. He hates Superman. Like, so it's like there's no, there's a very weak half-assed thing where it's like, oh, you know, he has daddy issues, that you get like
Jesus issues
partway through. No, it's like very blatantly like he's got daddy issues.
Right.
And that's just, like, that doesn't get me there. And it's such, like, a throwaway line when that part even happens. You know, it's like, he's like, oh, blah, 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 my daddy didn't, you know, God didn't save me from my father beating me, therefore, like, I hate Superman, is essentially what we get. And it's like, I'm just like, that's...
How, if A, then... you know, an alligator.
Right.
Instead of B.
Right. Yeah, and so that's just the way it is with so many things. Like, there's so much unmotivated action in this movie. It's just people doing things. And, like, even minor things like establishing shots are just, like, there's no regard. It's just like, well, we could show a larger frame to explain how we got to this particular location.
But who cares?
But fuck that. Like,
right.
There's literally a scene where Batman is going through like some newspaper clippings about Superman and stuff, and at least I think, because there's not really an establishing shot that tells you that it's actually Batman doing this. You just see the back of a dude's head, and I think it was Ben Affleck. And then there's right then. You know, a moment later, it cuts to Metropolis, and this dude, you know, doing this other thing, but it's the back of his head, and so it took me, like, another cut to realize, oh, we're not in Gotham with Batman and his, like, conspiracy board anymore. We're in Metropolis, outside, at the Metropolis Memorial with this other guy. Because, like, there's not an establishing shot. Yeah, there's not a wide shot or a master that's like, here's where we are now. Like, it's just, like, right to this dude, and I'm like, wait, what just happened?
Right.
And so that kind of stuff happens a lot. Weiss says, I can't bring myself to hate it, though. That's fine. I didn't hate it. Hate would be a strong... There were things... There's a scene... It's in the trailer, actually, which is a big problem, too, right? The trailer ruins fucking everything about this movie. Like,
what a surprise. That's what trailers do these days.
Yeah. But there's a really great scene where Batman beats the shit out of a bunch of dudes in a warehouse. That scene is fantastic. Wonderfully... Like, that... It's like, you know... It's almost like he was like, well, this is a part where Batman gets to do cool stuff, so I'm going to have him do cool stuff. And I'm going to take a lot of care with this scene and make sure the fight choreography looks good, and the you know, the edits all make sense, even though in the rest of the movie, in a lot of places, they don't. And I'm, you know, all this stuff, like... And in that moment, you're like, this is fucking sweet, because it's just Batman being Batman and beating the fuck out of a whole bunch of guys, and that's fucking great. But, it's a 5-minute sequence, and then it ends with him murdering somebody because, that's how this Batman rolls. Right, exactly. Right. Wonder Woman is awesome.
I have heard that as well.
She's straight up she just shows up and kicks a bunch of ass, and then, leaves.
What else do you need?
Right. And, you see a lot of Diana Prince throughout the film, but when she's Wonder Woman, she literally shows up and saves Batman's ass from Doomsday, and then just, fucks a bunch of shit up.
All right, peace out.
Yeah, and it's, but Doomsday looks like a special effect from 15 years ago. Looks terrible. And, again, it goes back to that thing where, Lex Luthor hates Superman, so he's going to create this thing that, if it weren't for Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman, would literally destroy the planet. Because it doesn't... That's the thing about Doomsday in the comics, right? He's... so I don't know if you know Doomsday's sort of terrible origin from the comics.
No, it's not a character I ever really... I know the name, and that's it.
So, in the comics, there's this scientist on some other planet out in space, and he makes this baby, and then, tortures it to death, and then clones the baby, and then, makes a new baby, and tortures it to death again. But it's retaining, genetic memory.
That's so dumb.
So eventually, after torturing this baby to death, 1,000 times, it's born as Doomsday. And then it destroys the planet that it's on.
Because why wouldn't you at that point?
Right. And then it flies through space and eventually lands on Earth and wants to fight Superman because he's the strongest thing. But he'll just keep going, right? He'll destroy everything because he's Doomsday.
He gives no shits.
Right. So for some reason in this movie, Lex Luthor makes him Frankenstein created his monster, and then it's and then what? You know what I mean?
Right.
If Doomsday was to not be stopped, okay, spoilers, they stop Doomsday. He doesn't just rampage and destroy the Earth.
Right. So he defeats Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Then what?
Right.
That's what you're saying.
What's Luthor's genius plan to stop him from rampaging and destroying the entire Earth? Because that's what he's going to do. Especially since they also established that the more he gets beat up, the stronger he gets. So if Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman fucked him up real bad, and he kept getting stronger from that, and then was unleashed on the world, there's nothing that can stop him. I guess this is a minor spoiler, but they nuke him at one point, and it doesn't kill him. So, I don't know what more we can do after that.
Yeah, right.
And so that's just the kind of shit that it's just I can't... It's such sloppy storytelling. David Goyer, Chris Terrio, and Zack Snyder all... Terrio and Goyer got the writing credits, but Snyder, I believe, also... And I guess Affleck did some script doctoring after the fact, but I don't know to what extent. So...
Right, yeah.
But it's just a fucking mess. That's the biggest thing about it. That's Batman and Robin is terrible in a ton of ways.
Terrible.
And it's mostly boring. This movie isn't necessarily boring, but it's so messy that it's hard to enjoy for any significant period of time, just because
it's so poorly made.
You're scratching your head the whole time. Also, there's this weird thing where I just feel there's a certain embarrassment about some things. Okay, here's a weird thing that I have not seen anybody talking about. The word Batman is not spoken in that film one single time.
Yeah, I saw you comment about that, and it seems really weird.
Unless I missed one, which I don't think I did, because after a while I started looking for it, right? Because nobody was saying Batman, and I was so maybe early in the movie, Alfred calls him Batman or something, but for the period, I don't remember anybody calling him Batman. They refer to him as the Bat Vigilante, the Bat, or the Gotham Bat. That's what they call him.
Weird.
And that's the other thing. like, they talk about how, like, before the movie came out, there was a lot of talk about, like, oh, we want this Batman to be, like, a more experienced Batman, and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. But they seem, like, it's so unclear as to how long he's been Batmaning. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's reference to a death in the family, which is the thing where Jason Todd gets killed by the Joker. Right. So he's been around long enough to have a Robin and have that Robin get killed. And if we're supposed to take that at face value, Jason Todd was the second Robin, so he's had two Robins, and one of them died, and we don't know what happened to Dick Grayson.
And we don't know. Is there Nightwing or what?
Right, yeah, there's no... so, non-spoiler, Nightwing doesn't just, like, randomly show up at some point.
Hey.
Yeah. We know the Joker is a thing, because he gets... Well, the Jason Todd suit has, like, "Joke's on you, Batman, ha ha ha," spray painted on it, so, like, that's... But then he does actually mention the Joker at one point. So... We know that the Joker is a thing. Obviously, we know that Suicide Squad is a movie that's happening, so we know that the Joker is a thing. But there's no, like, surprise Jared Leto cameo either. He's just mentioned. So we know that, like, these things are established, but, like, it's weird that there's no mention of him in Man of Steel. Because another thing that they weirdly added is that Gotham and Metropolis are now sister cities located just, like, across a body of water from each other. Like, you can see the Gotham skyline from the Metropolis harbor, and vice versa.
That's checked up.
So, it's weird that they went, like, that there was never any mention of, like...
Neither one of them could patrol both cities.
Right. And also, it makes it really weird that, like, the crime and corruption and grossness of Gotham doesn't bleed over to Metropolis, right? Because they're right there.
Right.
So, that's all really weird. It's just, like I said, it's just so incoherent. It's trying to squeeze so much into one movie. And it's trying to catch up with Marvel, right? That's the thing. This is a movie this is DC, like, or Warner Brothers, you know, both of them, right? Trying to, like, throw down the gauntlet and be like, we're catching up to Marvel. And it's like, Marvel there's been a dozen movies.
It took a long fucking time to get all that shit together.
There's been a dozen movies, and we are just now getting to see a fight between Cap and Iron Man, right? And that all feels organic because we've had, you know, 4 movies that feature Cap and 5 movies that feature Iron Man,
right?
Heavily, right? And you know, a number of minor interactions in some of those movies between the two of them, and
yeah, exactly.
You know, it's just like, okay, well, now there's enough established there that when they fight over the thing they're fighting over, we'll be like, okay, I get why Captain America would feel that way, and I get why Iron Man would feel that way, and
why they would be conflicted about being against each other and all that shit.
Right. But it's so, like, manufactured in this case, because we don't know anything about this Batman, and we don't know much about this Superman, and so it's just sort of like, well, okay, you know, they're fighting. You know, Batman sure doesn't like Superman, you know, from what you can gather, really just because of the shit that happened at the end of Man of Steel, which I sort of get, but, like, it turns into this sort of, like, missing the forest for the trees thing from Bruce Wayne, where he's like, oh, those innocent people died, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I get that, and I get being pissed, but, like, seriously, like, Zod would have killed the entire human race, so, like, there's a certain measure of collateral damage involved here, and given that, like, you just drove over a dude's face to get a box out of the back of a truck, like, maybe you're not one to talk.
You really care, yeah.
You know, and Superman doesn't like Batman, right? Superman doesn't like Batman because he takes the law into his own hands, which, you know, is also what Superman does. Yeah. So, like, that's the thing. It's just like, nobody's motivations make any sense. Like, Lex Luthor is definitely the most egregious one, where you're just like, there is no reason for this guy to hate Superman this much, but, like, he just does. Like, and they're not going to bother
doing anything about that.
Yeah, like, actually telling us why they're just, again, it's just like in the comic, Lex Luthor has hated Superman for 70 years in the comics, or however long since Luthor's debut, and so, like, that's just how it is. He just hates Superman, so, like, just accept it. And, like, the Marvel movies don't do that, right? Like, they don't go, like, well, it's this way in the comics, so just, like, accept it, nerds, like, or non-nerds, because that's the biggest problem, right, is people who don't know the comics see these movies and they're like, I don't get what's going on.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's what the problem was previously with a lot of superhero movies, was that it was presumed that the audience was comic fans, and so they just presumed knowledge or buy-in on tropes or whatever that sort of held them back from being good, like, basic films.
Right. Well, and that's, I mean, now that there's sort of a line, in Marvel's case, a line of films, you can do more of that, right? Because now you've got a mythology.
Say, well, all the movies are out there, and so, right. In a form that people would, and we know lots and lots of people have seen them because the box office is ridiculous, so.
Right.
You can't, now you can assume that people that are going have seen these things.
But the Marvel movies have also done a pretty good job of being self-contained stories, right? Like, I feel like if you walk into Winter Soldier and you haven't seen Avengers or Captain America 1, like, you're not going to be so lost. You're not going to be like, I don't get what the fuck is going on. Like, if someone is just...
some stuff you don't understand, but it won't be... You won't be like, why is this happening? Yeah.
Right. And that's the big problem, is, like, again, it just makes the film asks the audience to make a lot of leaps, and I feel like those leaps are very hard to justify, because everybody's going to come up with a different thing, because it's not blatantly in the text.
Yeah.
Like, somebody said something to me about one thing in the movie, like, yesterday, and I was like, there's nothing in the text. Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying that there's nothing in the text. I'm trying to remember what it was. But there's nothing in the movie that actually indicates that you're right about that. Like, shit just happened. So, like, it was something about Lex Luthor, I think, or it was just like, oh, he did it for this reason. And I'm like, but
where did you get that?
You're like reading into it and making an assumption. The movie, like, there's literally nothing in the text that supports what you just said. Like, there's nothing in the text that like counteracts what you said either.
Right.
But that's not good enough. Right. And that's just the whole movie in a nutshell. But again, it's not Gunblast vodka, it's not Thanksgiving 3, it's not even Batman and Robin, right? Like, it's like Batman Forever level of, like, it's a different kind of disaster than Batman Forever, I think. But Batman Forever, is a bad movie, but not the total boring train wreck that Batman and Robin is.
Yeah. Batman and Robin is just a bloated, boring pile of shit.
Yes. True story. But, I mean, even, like, I feel like I need to revisit Superman Returns just to sort of contrast them, because that's the big that's another thing that, like, a lot of people have said and that I sort of agree with, which is that, like, Superman is a very, like, he's an aspirational hero, right? Like, we're supposed to see the good in ourselves and the potential for what humans can be in Superman, even though he's not human. And this movie doesn't really examine that in any meaningful way. Superman's kind of a dick, and he's like, his parents keep telling him that he doesn't have to be Superman, which I guess, like, strictly speaking is true.
But that's like a major betrayal of the sort of core of the character.
Right. Like, there's a moment...
Like, so why does he become Superman at that point if everyone is like, nah, you don't have to do this?
Right.
Like, then you gotta, like, justify that. Right?
Right.
But then that sort of betrays the mom and apple pie thing that you would have, which you don't necessarily have to have.
I mean, you don't, but
you need to
get there somehow, right? Yeah. And, his... Like, in this movie, there's a moment where he's talking to Lois Lane, and he's basically just, like... It's, like, almost like it gets, there's a couple times when the movie gets close to examining Superman in an interesting way and have him have like a realization of like, no, this is really what I need to do because people need Superman. But it always stops short. There's a conversation with Lois Lane on the balcony that like does that, and there's a moment where there's like
Lois Lane?
Amy Adams.
Okay.
She's pretty good. She's not given a ton to do in this movie.
That's a shock.
But like she,
I think she's very charming.
Yeah, she is. But shit, I lost my train of thought. There's a moment where there's a Senate hearing, and it's like, you know, like they make they ask Superman to show up to this Senate hearing so that he can, you know, talk about being Superman and like face them and be like, you know, because they're like, is Superman responsible for, you know, things, right, things XYZ,
right?
And so Superman, you know, shows up and he's like ready to face the music, and then like right as they're about to get to the point of like, you know, what does Superman mean for the world and what, you know, all that kind of stuff, the building just explodes instead. And he just stands there looking sad, like in the fire. I'm like, there are probably people not in the room that you're in who survived that explosion. Like, maybe you should be trying to help them.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's just a fucking mess, is what it is.
That's a shame.
But, I mean, again, I wouldn't say go see it necessarily. Like, I use my AMC Stubs rewards, so I paid like $2 for it, because I had concerns. Yeah.
Yes,
But that's another movie that I can't go see for almost free.
Right.
I have to buy a bunch more popcorn now before I can see another free movie, almost free movie. You know, but I would definitely say to people, judge for yourselves. And again, there are some cool. The fight against Doomsday is actually not that bad either. The Doomsday effect is really bad, but the fight is actually a pretty good use of all three of the characters' strengths. Where, like, you know, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman obviously can't go toe to toe with Doomsday, but you know, he's really fucking smart, so he is sort of, I don't know. That part worked in a lot of ways for me, but the scene where Batman beats up all the dudes in the warehouse is definitely the best part of the movie. But Jeremy Irons as Alfred is wonderful, and I hope that if Ben Affleck directs a solo Batman movie, that Irons is still in it, because he was great. Yeah, he's great as Alfred.
That's good casting.
Yeah. Also, there's this really awful nested dream sequence that a lot of people, I think, have complained about, but, like, the Flash shows up in a dream sequence, I saw
somebody make some, like, confused remark about the Flash, and I did not understand what they were talking about.
Yeah, it's so weird, and, like, it doesn't make any sense. Also, he doesn't look like the Flash. Like, somebody was like, I think he's supposed to be Flashpoint Flash, which is like a weird alternate universe, like DC universe story.
Right.
Which also made some people speculate, like, maybe they're setting up to do like a Crisis on Infinite Earths thing, which would explain why all of these versions are assholes, and then they can be like non-assholes later if they do the Crisis bit. Right. But that seems like kind of a leap. And also, like, that's a hard sell to people who aren't comics fans. To be like, no, see, what's happening is there are, like, 200 parallel universes in the DC universe, and each of them have their own version of Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and The Flash. And, like, in one of them...
You've done no legwork to sell any of that shit yet.
Right. Yeah, in one of them, it turns out that Lois Lane gets killed and Superman becomes, like, dictator of the Earth. Like, that's a fucking hard sell.
Yeah, that's not gonna... Yeah.
So... I don't know, but it's past 11, and my wife just got home shortly before I started this stream, and if I finish this 40-man battle royal, it's going to take a really long time, so I think we're going to say goodnight at this point until next week. But yeah, this has been me playing Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, so for WrestleMania. WrestleMania is on Sunday. And that reminds me, actually, if anybody's still watching, I'm gonna put this up on the YouTube channel probably pretty quick. Bashamania, which is my friend Greg, who I do Bowling Shoe Ugly with, and his girlfriend V, they are doing a 16-hour marathon of wrestling games on Saturday to benefit Extra Life.
Nice.
So you should check that out. If you give a certain amount of money,
check that out and contribute.
Yes, you should check that out and contribute. If you give a certain amount of money, I think it's $30 or something like that. V will draw any wrestler that you would like for you, and she will send it to you. So. Also, I forgot how much it was, but they're very close if they haven't passed the goal already. But there is a goal that if they make a certain amount of money, V will do a karaoke version of John Cena's entrance theme. So, yeah, that's all stuff worth checking out. That's on Saturday. It's at if you just go to buttonmashbash.org, you can check that out. That's on Saturday once again, the Saturday before WrestleMania, which is this Saturday, April 2nd. And that's it. Kurt and I are out of here, and we'll talk to you next week. Same stick time, same stick channel.